As we look at the inside of this computer, it looks pretty technical, and for those who are not very familiar with this, it seems a little bit scary and intimidating. So we're going to take it piece by piece, and I'll try to explain each component. The very first component I want to talk about is that board that is up against the back of the computer. So it is this board all the way back here. It's this huge thing. It goes to this top edge, it comes all the way around down here, across the bottom, and all the way up the top. So it's basically, it's kind of like a wall in the back of this computer, and everything is sitting in it. We notice that this thing is sitting in it, these two long linear things are sitting in it, two more long linear things under here that are sitting in it. This card here is also sitting in it. You can see some more stuff sitting in it. We have a bunch of cables running in and out of it as well. So I'm going to talk about that first, and that device is the motherboard. The motherboard is the central circuit board in the computer. We can also kind of think of it as the computer's spine. The next component I want to talk about is the BIOS. The BIOS is the basic input and output system of the computer. It remembers the day and time and other hardware settings. It remembers these settings because a battery helps it to not forget when the computer is turned off. So over here in the upper right, we kind of see a shiny round thing there that kind of resembles a watch battery, and pretty much that's what it is. So this shiny round thing, which appears to be a watch battery, is the BIOS battery. So if you ever get a system error that talks about your BIOS battery is low, this is the battery that you would need to replace. And that typically happens if you leave your computer unplugged for a long time, so the system has to run off this battery and it will run out. The next part of the motherboard I want to show you is the power connection. And that is actually this big huge cable down here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see it really well, it's kind of dark, but it's this huge cable right here. And there's actually a little clip on top that you can push to unplug it, but I'm not going to unplug it right now. So the motherboard requires power to feed all of its components. Sometimes during shipping or during transit, like you're driving it home or taking it to campus, this thing can come unplugged, can come loose, and may need to be plugged in all the way. Sometimes when you call Dell and during troubleshooting, they'll ask you to reseat the power connector to the motherboard, and this is what they're talking about. So to unplug it, you need to push down on this little tab right here to unplug it, and then when you plug it back in, it should snap back into place. So it's like a little tab that kind of grabs on to the socket of the motherboard to prevent it from falling out. And they put this tab in here because this thing coming unplugged became a pretty common problem. So remember that when Dell asks you to reseat the power connector, what they're basically asking you to do is to unplug this thing and plug it back in. So I'm going to slide this plastic thing out, and what I did was I pressed on this thing right here to release it on both sides and just slid it out. And what I want to show you here are the serial ATA connections. This is where our hard drive and our CD-ROM drive are connected to the motherboard. And we can kind of see a little bit of annotation on the motherboard where it says SATA 1. There is also a SATA 0, but it's kind of written towards the bottom. So this is where all of your SATA devices connect, such as your hard drives and CD drives. SATA stands for Serial Advanced Technology Attachment. These two can accidentally come unplugged during shipping. So if you boot up your computer, it says it can't find the hard drive, this might be a good place to check and make sure that these things are securely connected. Our motherboard also has a lot of integrated devices. So if you go to the integrated devices area, which is kind of up here in the corner, it's kind of hard to see, but it's all of these things over here. And if we look at the back of the computer, we can see that our integrated devices are audio, serial port, USB Ethernet, ability for a keyboard and mouse with this type of connection, and USB ports. So instead of having separate cards, these devices are actually integrated into the motherboard. And there's going to be separate chips for these, but they're probably located underneath this huge processor sink under there somewhere. So for now we can only see the output part of these integrated devices. And when we look at the back of the computer and we see that all of these integrated devices are on one side like this, that kind of hints to us what side that motherboard is on, and that allows us to know which way we need to lay the computer down if you don't have convenient feet on the back side of your computer denoting which way you should lay your computer down on. The next area of our motherboard are these expansion slots. They come in different colors and different sizes, and the reason why is because they support different buses. And our first expansion card is this thing right here, and this is our video card. Some video cards are very good about labeling so you know exactly what that device is, and some are not so. So this one down here, this one happens to be our FireWire card. So we ordered this machine with additional FireWire ports, so we have a FireWire card here. These slots are also sometimes called PCI Express slots. And like I said, many of them will have different buses, so if you buy a card, you'll need to pay really close attention to the type of slots that you have in there. Sometimes they're labeled, like these here are labeled, and sometimes they're not. If you're not sure what it is, always refer to the reference manual if you want to purchase an additional expansion slot card for your computer. Alright, so now to this huge black thing that's been kind of in our way, blocking our views to other things. And this huge black thing happens to be where our processor is. So our processor is actually a little chip underneath this really huge heatsink. And this huge metal thing, this is our heatsink. And right now it's just covered with this plastic thing. They typically cover it with this plastic thing to prevent end users like ourselves from getting burned. This heatsink can be very, very hot. Next we have our memory. So these two horizontal things up here across the top, that happens to be our system memory. And we have another two down here at the bottom. So this computer has a total of 16 gigabytes of RAM, which means that each of these DIMMs are probably about 4 gigs in size. And DIMM stands for Dual Inline Memory Modules. Memory often works in pairs, so if you plan to do any kind of memory upgrade, you may want to pay attention to which slots they need to go into to make sure that they are continuously able to work in pairs.